The lawn cutter might just as well not have been there at all. The gardener will be there a lifetime. Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451. This is AMI Audiobook Review. I'm your host, Jacob Shymanski, and today we're doing something we're doing two things that we haven't done in a while. That's have producer Ramya Amuthan on the show, but also get to a question we asked to the book club. We don't do this often enough. Rams, how's it going?
It's going well. You posed this question to the book club, and we got some fun answers for it. But also, I want to say Fahrenheit 451, what a throwback. That was mandatory reading for us in high school.
Maybe in the English school system. I don't even know what it's about.
True.
What is it? I like that quote.
Burning books.
What is it about?
But that's the temperature at which books burn. So it was like the whole, dystopian world / question of erasing literature. Yeah.
So today the question that we had to do with things that we wish authors would do more often or less often. Basically a wish list that our book club had for authors, just generally. So authors, listen up. But it's actually kind of funny. We say it's our book club. It's totally not our book club. We kind of stole an email list from a local book club, and they've been kindly answering our questions. But we know most of these people, don't we, Rams?
Yeah. This kind of question, I think, is very, very broad, right?
Yes.
So the kinds of answers we got, responses, were very much opinion pieces. And I think there's going to be a lot of, agreement, disagreement, I don't even know what you're talking about kind of reaction to this prompt.
Pretty compelling answers, though. Do you want to get the first one from Ryan Huey?
Yep. Okay. So the prompt is really like, what do you love when authors / narrators do? I opened it up to narrators when I put it out there. And we said, just go for whatever you want. So Ryan Huey, who used to be on the Chatty Bookshelf and even on this show on AMI Audiobook Review, says, something I love is when you get half the story first, and then throughout the book, they do throwback or a trip back in time for when the unknown actually happened. For instance, you know that Marvin was murdered in 1998, but the book starts off in present day. And then all of a sudden in chapter 15, they do an actual throwback to 1998. And then you start to find out the details that unravel the story. Yeah.
Okay, so just an unlinear storytelling style, but I think it's in this case it seems like it's much more specific for Ryan, where it's you kind of say what the ending is before, and then the whole book is what led up to that ending.
Yeah.
It's like going into a book with a spoiler, but then wondering how you got there. And this is the epitome of it's not about the destination; it's about the journey.
True. And also he's talking about murder mysteries, which I think really lend themselves to this kind of thing. Like not necessarily knowing where that you're not getting the full story. Get it? Like it's part of the process to know that you have to unravel the mysteries and the issues that have happened beforehand, backgrounds of characters. It would be super boring if you got to know all the profiles and everything else ahead of time. That's not part of
you know what this reminds me of? Prophecies in fantasy books, where it's kind of like the same thing. It's just instead of knowing what happens, it's just kind of wrapped up in a riddle, and the prophecies often do end up being correct.
Okay. Yes. Now, is that like a known kind of
like a known
element to
storytelling
fantasy?
trope?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Prophecies are treated very differently from one series to another. Sometimes, like in the Song of Ice and Fire series by George R. R. Martin, they're just like flat out wrong, and they're what is that called in a book when like an author drops clues that are meant to throw you off?
Oh,
There's a word for that.
I don't know.
It's like
Misleading.
meant to. Yeah, it's like yes, it's just misleading, which sounds a little manipulative. I personally kind of hate that shit.
Really? But in mystery, that's got to be part of the thing, is like to throw you off, right? To throw you off the scent of different characters that you're like, oh, that's a suspect for sure. Oh, shoot, it's not. Oh, it was a doctor all along. It's got to be part of it. But Ryan, sorry, what were you going to say?
It has to be done well in
Yeah.
that case. You're totally right. In mystery, you need to have that kind of thing. It just doesn't have to be so explicit. Like if you
Yes.
reread the book and you're like, oh, this is so obviously, or is it called a red herring? I think it might be a red herring.
Oh, yeah, I think you're
Mhm.
right. Okay. Yeah, red herrings.
Mhm.
But with Ryan's thing, I thought of psychological thrillers specifically, where they kind of rope you into different narratives, different threads, and then pull things together throughout the book or closer to the end, where things are just kind of the web is starting to make sense. You're starting to see the bigger picture now. It's not exactly what Ryan Hui said about, going back in time, getting thrown back into particular moments to give you more insight around the halfway mark through the book. I think that's a very specific thing he's pulling at. But in psych thrillers, I love when like two narratives end up meeting in the middle, and timelines usually play a big part in that.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
I've seen this kind of thing before.
Yeah.
In The Lies of Loch Lamora by
Hmm.
Scott Lynch. In the second book of that series, the opening scene is basically them at a dock, and basically one of the characters betrays the other and points a crossbow at him. And then you're
Okay.
like, you don't know why that happened. And then it cuts to the start of the book. And
Right.
so the rest of the book is just wondering, why would these two end up betraying each other?
Yeah.
And you have that question going into it. And so it's an amazing hook.
Exactly. It's a good hook. You kind of see that. I'm seeing it more common as an intro into books, like not necessarily a prologue, but yeah, that first kind of here's a tease of something that happened that will come up later, right? It again, usually investigative series or mysteries, but doesn't have to be. In The Silent Patient, there's two sides to the narrative. One is, and obviously these are like POV as well, perspective of different characters, but it's a psych thriller, and one narrative you're following are just the diary entries of the murdered victim, and then the other is present day
Oh,
investigation of how she died. So you know what I mean?
huh.
It's a split timeline, split process, split character perspectives, but eventually they're going to meet in the middle somewhere.
And a diary is barely even a timeline. It's
No.
like atemporal almost.
Yeah. It's just clues, kind of. That's what we're using it as.
Another entry we have here is from Peter Tsitsanis. What I love in a book is when the development of characters that are reflective and philosophical about events in their lives and events that impact them and their surroundings. Obviously, a good story helps to bring this out and to sustain the interest of the novel. And to sustain the interest. The novels of Louis D. Bernier do this pretty well.
Hmm.
What's your interpretation of this one?
Okay, so I thought originally Peter was going for like internal monologue, which is what I want to talk about soon, but he's talking about development of characters that are reflecting on events, right? Like they're kind of reflecting and pondering through events that have actually happened. So I feel like it's a bit different. I feel, and also I feel like I need an actual example.
That are reflective and philosophical about events in their lives. So
Yes.
things that happen to them essentially. I think what I'm understanding here is that it's when characters are very philosophical and introspective about what happens to them. They're not just like reacting to what's happening. They're analyzing themselves as if they were like a psychotherapist
Mm.
almost, which is not something we all do, but it's something characters totally can do. I'm trying to think of an example of this.
That's what I was going to say. Like when something dramatic happens in a character's like an event that a character goes through, are we talking about them reflecting in internal monologue later with us, like, I could have done this, I could have done that? Because I don't really take that in as a particular part of books. Or are you talking about, Peter, are you talking about characters talking to each other through dialogue, unwinding after an event, and then that catapulting or being a catalyst to a next set of choices?
It's
You know what I
one
mean?
thing. Yeah, I do. It's one thing for a character to react to an event that happens to them. And it's another thing for them uh, to be introspective about how that event affected them, like on a
Yeah.
deeper level. And I actually thought of an example
Okay.
in The Order of the Phoenix by Harry Potter
Oh yeah, that's a good.
by
Yep.
J.K. Rowling.
Yep. Yeah, book 5 is all this, right? It's
Yeah,
all
and
like
season
why,
4, he's just
why?
raging all the time.
Yeah.
He's so angry. And
Ugh.
he does actually philosophize internally about that and just thinks about the isolation, how he's been put in this role of like as like this like mentor to all the other students. It's an awkward position for him to be in, and he reflects on that internally. And that's partly why the book is so damn long.
That's true. And also, like, I was thinking of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which all she does is reflect and philosophize. That's the entirety of the book, where she's immortal, right? Like, she's never going to die, but she's invisible to everything around her. So she's basically on her own. She's completely isolated, but
All
in a
she
world.
can do is
Yes,
philosophize.
exactly. Quite literally. Because the whole world is happening around her, but she is not leaving a mark on anyone or anything. So all we get of her is how she is going through this invisible life.
I'm not sure if this is the type of thing that I really love in a book personally, but I could see why people would like it. And especially like I know
It's
in your
deep. It's
personal
depth.
taste in books,
Hmm.
Ramya, like you love um like psych dramas
I do. Yeah.
and psychological thrillers, that type of thing. It seems like
Right.
exactly the sort of element that would be in that type of book.
Yes, and the analysis, like the philosophizing and the analyzing of, like let's just pause on the event side and like see why characters are behaving this way. The psychoanalysis is really interesting to me. So yeah, but I never thought about it um particularly like the way that Peter put it down. So thanks, Peter.
Because it's not every book that does this. This is not
No.
like one of those elements that's present in every book of fiction ever. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's actually a very unique thing. So in that
Yeah,
case, I totally understand why it applies to this question.
true.
What's
Okay,
the next
Danielle
one?
McLaughlin, who is a regular contributor on the show, she responded to this question of what do we love that authors do or wish authors would do more of? And she says, I'm currently reading a book of short stories by the Southern US writer Eudora Welty. I love everything about her writing, but particularly the way she captures speech. Her dialogue sounds to my ear as if she's eavesdropping on her characters. I think it's a rare writer who can do this, and I wish more could. And I'm adding that Danielle, her next chat with us on AMI Audiobook Review will be on Eudora Welty. It's a whole tribute / homage. So we'll be getting schooled on that soon.
Yeah, dialogue is one of those things that you can either do very straight or you can put a lot of work into having it to give it a personality, be that like expressions or accents or even just the level of how sharp and perfect it is. Because this is something that happens a lot in movies. Is the dialogue is impossibly snappy and witty because there's like a team of writers like
Yes.
putting it together.
Yeah.
Conversations are not done by groups of writers in a boardroom. They're organic and people sometimes say things they don't mean, uh, sometimes stumble on their words, and you can write that into characters.
Mm-hmm.
And if you combine that with regionalisms and expressions, that's when you get language that has a ton of character. I think of To Kill a Mockingbird
Oh,
by
yeah.
Harper Lee, and the character of the dialogue itself is so Southern and American. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so distinctive.
That's so true. Like you really feel like you can be placed in an environment, a living room, a school, a conference. Like the vibe and tone of a situation can really be delivered just through dialogue. But I think it's interesting you pointing out TV and film because there you're hearing people deliver dialogue, whereas when you're reading, and I guess it's the same for audiobooks, right? But when you're reading dialogue that's written to be read out loud or just kind of taken in, you're kind of filling in the blanks of what that dialogue is supposed to do, right? You're not getting all that external stimulation and not even necessarily the voices. But I think dialogue can make or break, entire satisfaction of books for me.
There's
Sometimes like description is beautiful, internal monologue is okay. Okay, the storyline is going well. The you know everything is great, but dialogue is so stilted or unbelievable that I can't like the book. you know?
Good dialogue is one of those things that you look at it and it's not that deep. You just kind of know
Yeah.
whether it works or it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's you know it when you see it.
You
There's no
feel it.
one way to do it. You feel it. It's the way the dialogue connects with the world, connects with the story
Mhm.
that the author is trying to say. And to expand on this conversation about dialogue, we've got another entry, another contribution here from Matt Shore. He says, "Drop dialogue tags and still keep me oriented. Crystal clear voice distinction. No he said or she said whatsoever. Feels like literary tightrope walking, and I cheer every step across." This is really challenging. I've gotten
No, he said,
confused in the
she
past
said.
listening
Yeah.
to audiobooks that do this. Sometimes what authors will do is I'll include like a few dialogue tags. He said, she said, but then there'll be a stretch of like maybe 4, 5 exchanges that have no dialogue tags whatsoever. And you're just meant to understand that. And this is uniquely challenging with audiobooks
Yes.
because the author the narrator has to make a very distinctive voice. Actually, none of them saying it out loud. It actually makes it uh, uniquely workable in audiobook format.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Like if you have someone who is great at distinct voices, right? Like we love Julia Whalen out here, and I never have issues knowing what character she's playing, especially if it's just like
Right.
3 or 4 character books. Then dropping the dialogue tags actually makes it feel like you're right in the dialogue with the person, and you're not constantly stepping out and saying, "Oh, this is a dialogue happening,"
Hmm.
because that is, writing scripts, right? Scripts to screenplays, scripts to films and TV shows. When you're reading scripts, you are picturing the dialogue. Whereas when you're watching the movie, the TV show, you're seeing it happen. You're in there with them. And it goes back to exactly what Danielle McLaughlin said, which is it's got to feel like you're eavesdropping on your characters, like you're in the room with them, witnessing this exchange. Or else you're constantly reminded that this is not a real dialogue.
Eavesdropping on the characters. I think that's just a function that the dialogue just feels real.
Yeah,
It feels
exactly.
real. Sometimes it's stilted. You get this feeling where you're like, people don't talk like that.
Exactly.
That doesn't feel real. But it's something they don't talk like they do in our world. It doesn't feel like they would talk like this in this world, in the world of the book. I mean,
Yeah. And okay, I think of Gilmore Girls, which is like one of my
what?
favorite TV shows. Yes, because dialogue in that show is quick. Like you talked about quick and witty, right? It's
Mhm.
quick, it's witty, it's not real. Nobody in real life talks the way that Rory and Lorelai spit back and forth at each other, or that any of the characters spit back and forth at each other. They barely take breaks between, they jump on the ends of each other's sentences. They talk a mile a minute. They always have something to respond. It's just boom, boom, boom. And I think like this is not realistic for dialogue in this world, but it is so believable that these two characters gel in this way and that the writing was supposed to feel like this, that you never sit back and question the believability of the dialogue. It's just that it's so impressive the way that it was written and performed.
That's an artistic choice.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's really cool. If it's cool enough, then it passes. And
Exactly.
I apply this to The Lies of Loch Lamora by Scott Lynch too. The dialogue
Yeah.
there is impossibly witty. Like it's completely over the top. They basically speak like dandies and half in riddles. And
Yeah.
it's so funny and over the top, but it's just part of the character of that book. And it fits because the world itself is pretty damn over the top too.
That's
And one
right.
of the most memorable parts of that book, in my opinion.
Okay. And eventually I will finish it. Okay. Do you have any more responses from the book club, or do you want to tell us one of yours?
We will get to ours because we want to contribute to this conversation
Mhm.
too. But there's another one here that I thought was really good from Emily Green. She says, use location as a character. When a city's fog rolls in with its own motives,
Mm.
or a haunted house has opinions, I'm hooked. Settings should breathe, scheme, and occasionally bind. Okay, this is kind of
I
trippy,
love
and
that.
it's something that like this idea of having settings have an almost human-like personality is very popular. I've seen a lot of
Mhm.
posts online being like, "Hey, can anybody give me a recommendation where the haunted house has a personality, has character?" And like, I'm not really sure I understand this one. I can't
What?
think of too many examples.
Oh, this resonates so much because for me, like, it already does. Do you remember that book? I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the title, but you and Sarah Hillis recently reviewed a book that was set in like a small island or town in Scotland or Ireland.
Oh yeah, this is one that Sarah reviewed solo. Oh my god, I forget the book
Okay,
she is
yeah,
in there. I
sorry,
think.
Sarah, we're
Mhm.
we're we're not doing well here, but
We'll add that in the notes. It'll be in
yes,
the
we'll add
show
it in the
notes.
notes, okay? We'll say, "My bad." But there you guys she talked about this exactly. She talked about just the water being its own character, the land being its own character. The characters themselves had to interact with the setting, which was so overwhelmingly part of the story and start part of the description and part of the fabric. So when people capitalize on that, when writers capitalize on that and can start adding in characters to bring the life out of settings of monuments, especially of inanimate parts of settings, I think it's beautiful. Not just like, and when I mean that, I mean not just the sunrise, or the movement of the water or the sound of the wind. I'm talking about like just the dead of the desert or the crumbling walls of the haunted house. Like these can be really really beautiful to add in characteristics.
Hogwarts has this sense of safety and innocence to it, right? At
Mhm.
least like inside the walls. And then you think of the Forbidden Forest.
Yep.
That's the exact opposite, right? These are settings that have personalities. Like the Forbidden Forest to me is like incredibly malicious. It's like
Yep.
this mean, terrifying personality. It's almost like it's attacking you, like it's a person, like it's a
Yeah.
serial killer. There's a scene in Song of Ice and Fire where Bran is in this cave that's full of bones, and the chapter is written very creepily. Lots of like dark imagery describing how the moon is dim that night and the crows
Mhm.
are singing, and there's bones everywhere. It's cold. It's like eerily quiet, and they say that Bran's friend Jojen just isn't present, and it's not really explained why. It just
Right.
says he's not there, and then Bran is given this red-looking soup that sort of tastes metallic, and he eats it, and the chapter ends. The implication is that Bran ate his friend. It's
Huh.
never said explicitly, but it's the setting and the way the chapter is written that makes you come
Yes.
to that realization.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
And it makes me think like, you're talking about the moon was dim and the lighting, right? Some of these most of these things honestly are so visual, but the feelings that it can evoke in you when life is given to setting, life is given to different times of day. I imagine like, a very crowded classroom where you're hearing the chairs creak and the pencils and the pens on paper, the chalk on chalkboard, the professor lecturing, and then that same setting being described in a empty way, right? The full and empty, where
Yes.
you're not
Yeah.
even necessarily in it for the dialogue or the things that are happening. But this happens so much where when you're constantly returning to scenes and settings, but it feels different, your mood shifts with the way that the setting is being written.
If you're in an old warehouse, an old abandoned warehouse, it makes the reader ask questions. Why is it abandoned?
Yeah.
Why did they describe the windows as being broken? Why is there graffiti? What kind of people have been here before? What happened here?
Hmm.
It's setting up a mood, and the
How
mood
long the dust is
informs
settled. Yeah.
exactly, and the mood informs like the mind space that the reader is going to be in.
Don't you feel like sometimes you have a hangover after like the next day party scenes? Like the party happened the night before, the
It's
Friday
fun.
night. Yeah,
Yes,
like everyone's drinking and merry. You were there with them, and then the next day, like you're hungover because
right.
it's gone.
I want to know what you have to say. Like, what do you want to hear from? What do you want to see from authors more often?
Well, I love getting into my protagonist's head. Okay. Like it
Mm,
doesn't even necessarily have to be written in first person omniscient, is that what it's called, when you're writing in that first person, getting to know every single part of your protagonist character. But I love hearing their thoughts, their reasonings, and psychoanalyzing the heck out of this whole situation. So not all authors do it well. Sometimes it really just feels like a bad diary entry, sloppy internal monologue, or this kind of desperation to write internal monologue, but still not doing it well or doing it cleanly. And that feels like a boring diary to me. But when it's done well, I feel like I am on this journey with this person. Sometimes it's really hard to separate myself when I put a book down from what I'm choosing to do and what my characters are choosing to do. Like, I start thinking like, but would Harry Potter do this? No, probably not. But with Ramya, I don't know. I don't know where I begin and my character ends. So I feel like I'm cheerleading with them. I'm mad at them. I feel like they need to get along with the characters that I think they should, right? Like, you start feeling super connected. How about you? Do you have any thoughts on internal dialogue or internal monologue? Sorry.
Internal monologue is weird because if it's too poetic or literary, you're thinking like, wait, this person, like this character is writing like this is weird. And sometimes there's a disconnection between like the character and the quality of the writing. So
Yes.
when you're writing in first person, an author has to be mindful of character voice to see what character is the writing giving off. And this is something Joe Abercrombie is so good at in his in all of his books, honestly. But if a character is known for being very cynical and quite dark, those chapters from that character's point of view are dark and cynical. If they come from the point of view of somebody who's like unbelievably egotistical and full of themselves and hedonistic, it feels like it's coming from a completely different author. But in truth, it's just the same author, but from a different character's point of view.
But I kind of love that because
I
yes,
love
you
it.
get
Absolutely. It's
full
awesome.
bias. You get your character's full bias, their outlook on the story, right? Essentially, that's what's happening because
It has
they're
to
telling
fit,
it.
though. There can't
It
be a
has to
disconnect between the
fit.
character of the first person narration and the first person character's personality.
You're right. Like, it can be jarring if somehow it feels like the stuff that's happening externally feels very disconnected to the way that this character should be picking it up, right? But maybe but that could be weaved in nicely as well.
Terry Pratchett has his books often be from an omniscient point of view. And he kind of, the idea with an omniscient point of view is that it's kind of like a God's point of view that understands everything. And sometimes it's kind of funny. And in Terry Pratchett's case, it's done very intentionally. Sometimes his omniscient narrators will have like a real personality and they'll make jokes and like editorialize on the story. It's kind of
God's sense of humor.
Yeah, like God's sense of humor, literally. Like seriously. I'm trying to remember a good example of this. Oh yeah. One point he described a horse as saying his mighty steed was as fleet as the wind on a mighty calm day.
Okay, nice.
So
it's not necessarily neutral just because you know everything that's going on.
It's just even the omniscient narrator has a personality, which is quite strange. It's very cheeky, very British. But anyways, that was just one of those things that I personally love in books, style from an omniscient narrator. Rams, that's all the time we have. This was super fun. We had more to get to, but that's what it is.
Next time.
That was Ramya Amuthan. She's the producer for this show. And that's all the time we have for today's edition of AMI Audiobook Review. The show airs weekends at 1 p.m. Eastern on AMI Audio and repeats every 6 hours. It's also available as a podcast, and that includes YouTube. If you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the channel to see the latest episodes. You can email us feedback at audiobookreview@ami.ca. That's at audiobookreview@ami.ca, and we will get back to your feedback. I'm Jacob Shymanski. Thanks for listening.